Hey guys, this is Brad from Blue Nile Farm. I want to thank you for watching series number 9, episode 9, which is going to be dealing with buying raw land. In this video, I think a lot of people are going to be of interest because this is primarily what people do when they want to live their dream. You have two options. You either buy raw land, build your house and build your farm and live in the country lifestyle this direction, or B, you travel another direction, and that is to buy pre-existing. But today we're going to talk about, right now in episode 9, buying raw land to make it all come true. Make your dreams come true. So to do this, you have to go back to the first 7 episodes that I just discussed about planning, thinking before you do, check with your zoning departments, talk to the county that you have an interest in, figure out the location that you want to settle down in, and do lots of research using the internet, using YouTube, use AI, do everything you can before you get to this point of buying land. You still have to also establish your financing. Now, most people that buy raw land, this is how it's going to take place. If you have a lot of money and you can buy the land outright, then you can just get a loan to build a house. A lot of other people, like myself, what we had to do would be to go out and buy the land and get with the bank at the same time, and also get a construction loan to build a house. So what the bank will do is they'll finance the property and they'll finance the construction of the house together. Then once the house is built, they're going to do a reappraisal and they're going to create what's called a construction, or basically a traditional fixed mortgage, and that's what you're going to wind up doing. And that's what you're going to purchase, and then you're going to get your financing set up for, say, a 30-year fixed, and start making your payments. And that's what they do. And I'm looking behind me right now, and I can see it's snowing like crazy. So, right now I'm in northeastern Ohio, and it's like 0 degrees. This is Martin Luther King Day. We're having that big, huge cold front that's creeping across the country, and we're just getting hammered with snow right now. Lake effect. It's a whiteout out there, and it is below 0, and I'm in the best place I can be, is right here in my comfy little house. So anyway, going back to our what we're talking about, 30-year fixed, smart move. That's the best thing you can do. Get locked in, and then worst case scenario, if the interest rates change, then refinance and build from there. A lot of times you're going to find out too that when you're doing a construction loan like this and you're building from scratch, that you're probably going to do several different finances over the years in changing and modifying your property and maybe building depending on what your intentions are as far as growth. Meaning, you might want to just do a land clearing job, or maybe you want to build in ponds, or maybe you want to put up a big barn. So you're going to get different types of financing along the way, and you may have to refinance several times over to continue on with your growth. Because every time you make a major capital improvement, you're also increasing your property value, which in turn, basically you want to borrow more money. And it's just a different type of lifestyle than you're used to when you live in the city. You live in a city, you buy a house, you live in a little lot, you look at your neighbors, and every other house looks the same, and you're stuck with property value based upon what everybody else is doing on the street. When you live in the country, you try to find comparables, and it's hard to find a comparable. Even for my property, I only own 32 acres. I have a horse farm. We have over 21 stall barn. I had an indoor riding arena. I had, different things that other people don't have. I have over 2 ponds on the property, and what happens is you try to find an exact comparable to the property and the house and what they have to offer. And a lot of times they can't find a comparable, so the ranges are a lot different. But when you live in a city, Sally that lives 2 doors down from him has the same exact house and the same little postage stamp yard. It's very easy to do a comparable, unlike what you do in the country. And that's why I'm saying that your values are always going to change, because you're always trying to improve the property, and it's going to be a little bit different. Anyway, when you're buying raw land, what we're going to say is raw land in itself is normally either wooded property. It could be all woods that hasn't been cleared. It could be a farm ground that has been farmed for years, or it could be fallow where it's sat unfarmed for years, but it has the potential to be built up, or it could be a combination of all the above. That's the land you're looking for. When you look for this type of land, look at your plan, because it all comes down to what your plan is. If your plan is to grow an orchard and make a garden and maybe plant something, you do not buy a woodlot, because then you have to clear that woodlot, and it's going to cost you time, money, and it's going to be not worthwhile. If your plan is to have horses and cows, and you're not going to put them in a woodlot. Again, it comes down to land clearing. So you have to look at it this way. When you have to do major renovation to a land to do that agricultural endeavor that you plan on doing, it's going to slow you down, or it's going to cost you so much more money to do so. It'd be better off for you to buy the land and pay a little extra per acre than it is to have the services done to the land that you purchase. So plan out what you're doing and what you want before you buy raw land. It really comes down to black and white. If my plan is to put 40 acres of hand and I buy a field that's already pre-farmed, I'm good to go. All I know is I have to do a soil test. I have to go out there and make sure that, I have this type of soil that I'm looking for, and I can check that easily before I even buy the land through soil and water in that area. I just need to do a soil test, and I'm pretty sure I probably have to add lime and fertilizer, and boom, I'm off and running. All I do is plow a field. But if I find out that in that geographical area that field just happens to have lots of rocks and they have rocky ground, maybe that's not the ground I want to purchase, because I found that out before I went there. And even if I went on that property and start walking around it, I want to find out what that soil is like, because that's what you're buying. You're buying land to till to make money. So check out that and use your resources, like I said, through Soil and Water Conservation or the County Extension Office, and they relatively may know what kind of ground you're buying in the area that you're working. But if you're grazing animals and you're just planting grass and it has rocky ground, do you really care? No, because, that's not going to matter. You're going to put a pasture down and hay seed maybe, or some kind of pasture seed. As long as your animals are grazing, you really don't care. But if you ever want to farm that ground, you may not want to have all those rocks. So those are things you have to plan for when you do this. Again, check your zoning. You want to make sure that you're zoned agriculture. You don't want to be all of a sudden where the county won't let you do what the things you want to do. Check your zoning before you buy that property, because those are things you need to know about. Walk that land. Find out if there's wetlands. Because if there's wetlands on your property, you may not be able to even build or tear up that area. You may have to protect it, because of the government's going to be up your butt because, you're touching a wetland, and you're affecting a habitat. So find out before you even buy any property, is there any wetlands on your property, or is it defined as a wetland? Also, you want to make sure you're not in the flood zone either when we're going this route, because it's going to affect your insurance. For one, if you build a house on there, it's going to affect you. And that's why a lot of times you want to walk properties. Are you by a river? Do you have ponds? What is already on this property? If it's a pond, is it a good pond? Is it just a hole in the wall? Does it need to be redone? Check and find out, does it have an overflow to that pond, or is it just the water? Because what happens is just some guys have ponds and they don't have a water overflow. If they do have an overflow in the spring, it's going to overflow because of the melt. Where's that water going? Is it have an out, or is it going to be leaching into your field? Find that out ahead of time, because these are things that you need to do. You have to walk every bit of that ground before you purchase it, in my opinion. I think if you don't walk it, you're making a mistake. A lot of times you walk on farm fields and you wind up having dump sites that are on the property, where guys are just, instead of having a garbage company get their garbage, they were dumping their garbage there for 20, 30, 50, 80 years. You're going to have a big mess. You don't want that. So walk and check that out. Find out if that property's been tiled. If you're buying farmland, it hasn't been tiled, meaning water's going to drain quicker, so it's easier to farm. Or has it been tiled, 100 years ago, and maybe if you're going to do crops, you might have settling water, or maybe the tile still works. But you kind of want to know what you're getting into before you get into it. Find out if there's any wells that have been drilled on the property, gas wells, oil wells, even water. Has it been even attempted? Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, but you want to find that out, because who has the rights to all those types of mineral rights? Sometimes when property is listed, the mineral rights are retained by somebody else. So you want to know that up front, because if you have an opportunity to get the mineral rights, why would you not want that? Why would you want to give that to somebody else? Because, you just don't know. So do your homework on every bit of parcel and every piece of property. I know I'm talking really vague about things, but it all comes back to your plan. What is important to you? land, it comes in a lot of different variations. It all depends on the areas that you work and where you live. And land is very diverse. You can buy land that's flat, like where I live right now. Everything's flat ground. I live right by Lake Erie. I'm a mile and a half from Lake Erie. I bought everything that's flat. And when I bought my property, and I'll tell you my story real fast, I did not do any homework. I didn't do much research. I was just looking for how much did it cost, because I didn't have a lot of money at the time, and I just happened to stumble upon this in a I don't even think it was even on the internet, because the internet didn't exist when I bought this, really. I found it was a listing that was actually listed. See, in today's society, you have the luxury of using computers. Back in 1995, when I looked, I had to look at a listing. And there really wasn't, you didn't have the internet to do any of your research. You actually had to call people and go out and find it. So I found this property that was for sale. I don't even recall how I found it. And there was other properties around me that were probably better than what I bought, but I bought this because it was affordable, it was cheap. I had a little bit of cleared ground, it had a lot of woods, and I had the fantasy that I'm just going to walk over here and I'm going to go clear it, and it's going to be easy peasy. Well, I didn't realize what it takes to actually clear land, and I went in very uneducated, but I bought this property, and when I walked it, it was wet, it was soaking. I didn't know where the pins were. I tried to figure it out. My property goes as a big L behind my neighbor's property, and I'd walk through the woods, and it would take forever because it was so thick, because it was lumbered in 1989. I'm looking at it in 1995, so you know that's about 8, 9, 10 years later, and you know the trees were small and brushy, and I figured I'll just come here and clear it, you know, and I didn't realize the cost and the equipment and what it's going to take to clear, and I made a huge mistake in that sense of purchasing this property, but I still was successful because I followed through with my plan that I said I was going to do when I purchased the property. My frontage is only 475 foot, and I guess I would want down the road larger width, but I'm okay with where I'm at, and I have 2 neighbors on both sides of me, one across the street, and you know my property is set back behind everybody's, so they're really not on top of me, and I kind of like that too. The one mistake that I made location-wise as far as on my street goes is that my house is the second house from an intersection. And at that intersection, there's a bunch of other houses that are lined up that go along the side of my property. And what happens is, and this is something you need to pay attention to, is they got a bunch of, we'll say losers, that have like 3 acres, and everybody that has like 2 acres and no land owns an ATV. So they decide that they can go zipping around on your property whenever they feel like it, drinking, throwing bottles, shooting their guns, and all kinds of shit, and cutting across your property for years. And that's one thing that I realized, that it really doesn't pay to live close to others when your property butts up to it, because people like to shoot in their backyard and they don't use backstops, and they just shoot whenever they feel like it. And I always worry about a horse getting shot or me getting shot walking around the back, because people just go out the door and think that, you know, they can shoot because they don't see anything, and you know, bullets go where they go. But that's a concern that I just want to let you know, is when you buy land, you want to make sure that you don't want to have neighbors creeping up on your sides or corners. And I would rather buy in the middle of the street, where they have to cover a lot more ground to get to your property, than when you have them button up to you and they feel like they can have access at any time onto your property. So get rid of that, and that'll make your life a little bit easier. That was my mistake, and I'm really not a fan of what I have. Now, behind me, I have a power company that owns the land, and I'm not worried about anybody encroaching me. But like I say, because those houses butt up to my length, you know, they cut across my property and my neighbor's property. You have nothing but disrespect for everybody's property, and it's very aggravating. And mostly they're young punk-ass kids, and they could give a shit. But I have guys hunting on my property too all the time, and it drives me crazy. You know, I went trail riding, looking up, and some clowns up in a blind, you know, and I was like, come on, dude, you know, no respect. No, like, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't notice your property or nothing. They know exactly whose property it is, because it ain't theirs, so they don't give a shit. So those are things that you need to be concerned with, because a lot of people feel like, you know, their property is their castle, and a lot of people do disrespect you and your property. So what I'm suggesting is move to places that you know, you're not that close to your neighbors, and you know, will have neighbors cutting across your property. It's just nature of the beast. I'm just telling you though that, you know, I would wish people would respect my property as I would respect theirs, and you're going to find that it doesn't always work that way when you move out to the country. And you have the same problems in this country as you have in the city. You just have more of them in less space. Meaning, you know, if you're want to leave the city because you have a bunch of assholes and criminals, well, guess what? You can go out to the country and you're going to have plenty of assholes and criminals, but they're just more per square mile because there's less people, but they're just condensed. You know, they're there. You can't get rid of them. You know, it's just that, you know, and that's why people move out to the country, to get away from all that. And unfortunately, it follows you. And, you know, it is what it is. I wish I could move farther away, and, you know, I probably would have less problems, you know. And you would think that, you know, in the country, the farmers they're in a brotherhood, and they're not. It's like any other business. It's cutthroat in some regards. You know, sometimes people create good, close bonds, but in all honesty, it's not always as close as you would think. You know, and it's, you know, I've learned a few things along the years, and the older I get, you wonder why everybody kind of stays to themselves. You know, it's not, you know, hard. You know, even with my neighbors, you know, we're all living in the country, but nobody's on top of each other, and nobody's into everybody else's business. And I think that's one thing that's nice. You live there, but you don't have to deal with them or interact with them as you would probably in a city. And that's one thing I have to say. But when you're looking for property, again, find property that meets your plans, your goals. And this met my goal and my plan, and I was able to fulfill my dreams by finding a property that would work for me. And the other thing you have to be aware of too, for a lot of us, once you really start developing land, raw land, to what you want it to be, your heart and your soul actually goes in that land, and you're proud of what you've done. And for me, I have a hard time breaking away from this land, knowing what I've done to it. But this last year, and if you follow my YouTube channel, I wound up losing one of my big, huge barns that's fallen down, and it kind of sucked a lot out of my life out of it because, you know, it's the biggest building I had. I had all my equipment inside of it. My hay business has been kind of hampered by this. If you look outside, I have hay right now that's getting loaded with snow. It's so cold out, but I'd rather it to be snow than rain. And, you know, but I'm losing money like crazy, and it just kicks me in the gut. And I don't know what the best answer is other than I just keep pushing forward. And I think that's part of living in the country. It's something that drives you to it. And, you know, it's your land. It's what you want to gain out of it. And I think personally that it's one of the things that's all I have. I mean, that's the most important thing in my life is to develop land and do things for me and create my farm. And that's what I like to do, and that's what I do it. I do it because it makes me feel good. Win, lose, or draw. And I've learned it to make it profitable. It's not just a hobby. It's become part of me. And now I'm more engaged than ever right now to make a lot of bigger improvements. And it's taken me 30 years to rise from nothing to now having something that I can actually do. Unfortunately, I have no kids. And when I'm dead, this property and everything I built, it's going to basically be given to somebody else. And my dad always told me, once you're dead, all you're doing is making a nice place for somebody else. And that's probably true. But the concept of raw land, when you can purchase it and make it fit who you are, is very important. And having that freedom to do what you want to do is also very important. And that's why I highly endorse doing it this way. Would I do it again, buying raw land? It depends on what your mission is. Because to find pre-existing property that fits your exact goal may not be there. And you may settle for something that you don't necessarily want. On the other hand, buying raw land is more expensive than buying pre-existing in a nutshell. And you may cost a lot more money trying to build a dream that you may not be able to afford. Let me give you an example. There's a lot of people that they own horses or want to own a horse. And they wind up buying raw land to fulfill their dream of taking that horse and having their backyard so they can feed it and take care of it and go ride it and do the things that you can do. In my personal opinion, after competing with horses, riding horses, training horses, boarding horses, you know, since I've done having horses in my backyard and feeding them and taking care of them and doing all the things to do, plus work a full-time job. Do I get to enjoy my horses? No. All I do is work to feed them and take care of them. I don't ride them. I don't enjoy them. I don't compete with them anymore. I don't do squat with them. And most people that I can tell, if I was going to give you a quick lesson, if you own a horse, you're almost better to board it somewhere else. So then you have that freedom to come and ride it and use it when you want it. And then you can use the time that you would be wasting taking care of it, using your horse. Then you trying to build a farm to have your horse in the backyard. It works for some people, but most people wind up losing interest in their horse over time because they're not riding them like they should. And I know a lot of people that are very active, with horses. They board just of choice. They can easily buy their own property, but they realize that the care and the maintenance of that horse kind of hampers their ability to enjoy the horse. So it's better that way. Now, I'm not saying you can't live in the country. I'm just saying is, having a horse in your backyard is a nice thing, but you're going to find out there's a lot of money, work, time, and effort that goes into it. And sometimes it's cheaper to have somebody else do all the work for you and provide that kind of service than it is for you to do it yourself. And that's just an example, And if you've owned horses and you've done it this route, you'll understand where I'm coming from, most of you. Because a lot of people, unless you have no job, and you don't have any other endeavor, and you that committed to the horse world, most people aren't. And it doesn't always work that way. Or they have the fantasy that they can do it better than the boarding facility, and a lot of times it doesn't come even close to that. They don't have the facility to manage the horse. The horses aren't living in the same amount of stall. Now you may have better turnout, but horses are not necessarily living in better as good of condition as they were because somebody else was taking care of them, and the stalls weren't cleaned as often as they should be. So, but anyway, I don't want to get off on another tangent. Raw land is the best way for you to create your dreams, but it's going to be more expensive too. Now, why do I want to buy raw land if that's farmable? You want that if that's your goal of tilling. Do not buy the idea and fantasy that I'm going to clear this ground and I'm going to build and I'm going to do this, that, and the other. You're better off to buy that ground that was already cleared before you do so. Because if you do that, you're going to save yourself a fortune. And the other thing is you're fighting the fantasy of time. Everybody has a dream they're going to do something, but it's going to take you years, if not never, for you to fulfill those fantasies because you may not have the equipment, the time, or resources to create that. It's better to buy it already done for you. And that's what's nice about raw land if you're buying land just to be farmed. For example, if I knew that there's a 100-acre property that's currently being farmed right now and I could afford to buy that 100 acres, I'd rather buy that 100 acres than to buy some field that's been sitting for 7 years, growing up with roots and stems and all this other stuff. Even if it costs me $2,000 or $3,000 less per acre, I'm better off spending that extra to buy that other land because it's all ready to go. So you have to look at what you gain and what you save, and this is coming back down to your research on the land that you're purchasing. How much are you saving versus trying to do it yourself? Because time costs money and it slows you down for progression. If you're going to have to pay somebody to clear the land, it can cost you over $10,000 the acre for land clearing. When you start adding all this up, it's almost better to invest and pay a little bit more for the land now up front than to do it later. That's kind of where I'm kind of alluding to. And again, do things that are going to meet your goals when buying land. You may not buy as much land as you want. I have a neighbor down the street. When I first moved out here, she was so happy because she bought 100 acres. That was her thing. I own 100 acres. Well, I only own 32 acres. She owns 100. She wanted to buy building a crappy little Morton building on her property. She only developed basically a lot size, maybe 100 by 200 of cleared ground, and put a house there and a tiny barn and a little tiny pasture for 2 horses. The rest of the 100 acres sat vacated for years. Then she wound up getting it all lumbered out, and it hasn't had one improvement since. And it just looks like crap. So she has 100 acres, a shitty little house, and a shitty little barn on 100 acres that does nothing. And to me, that property hasn't improved at all in the 30 years that I've been here. Whereas, she would have cleared the land and developed the land, then the land would have been profitable. I mean, she doesn't even trail ride through her 100-acre property. I don't think she ever walked it. And I think it kind of defeats the purpose. So, that's kind of my take on it. I think that, raw land is great. You got to do some research to it. Check that property out real well. Make sure it's within your reason, and you got to walk every inch of it. Geographically across the country, land gonna vary. If you go down to the hills of West Virginia, you can buy a mountain. You can buy a side of a hill. Is that what you want to purchase? Look and get the land that is feasible for you. Make sure it's accessible. Make sure it's on the right road. Make sure it's so far from your location. And the best part is, if you're buying raw land, buy land that is within your area. My brother recently, and I'm not knocking him because I haven't seen his property, but he moved to Florida and he wanted to buy his own land, and he was complaining because he couldn't afford land, and he wanted to find land in Wisconsin. I think he bought like 7 acres, and he went out there and he bought it. But I don't think he did his homework when he purchased the land, and his house is a little small for him. But I personally think that the more to make that kind of move from that far of a distance, I think it's tough. I think it's almost better to really go out and really research the land that you purchase. I made that mistake, and if I did it again, I'd really do some real smart hunting. Now, the downfall is the way the markets are, it's terrible. That, housing market, at least by us, is that people, you can't even put up a house on the market for, a couple of weeks, and people are overpaying for property. I don't know if that's still going on because interest rates went up, but it got to the point where it's very hard to buy land. But you got to try to do some kind of research as quick as you can and be efficient and know that's the property for you. You have to be a visionary. You got to see where your plan is. Where are you going to put the driveway? Where are you going to put the house? Where are you going to put the buildings? What do you need to do? How many acres is it going to take for you to graze your animals? These are things that you need to pay attention to and think of before you even start. Have a plan, and then you go looking for property. And again, it all comes down to many different factors of what you can afford and what you can do, how far is it from work, and so on and so forth. I keep bringing these issues up because these are things that people don't think about. They think about after the fact. You got to do it now before you jump. Raw land's a great thing. Do your homework. Be better off. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope that's a little bit helpful to you. I just want you to think out of the box. Know what you're getting into before you do it. And the other thing too is if you spend a lot of money on land and you want to put up a huge house, you got to make sure that the bank's going to work with you. Are they going to allow you to afford that? Can you make that monthly payment? That's what's nice when you buy pre-existing is you kind of have a know what it's all about right then and there, and you're walking into a home. And when you're building, you don't know all the hidden costs. You don't know where it's going to be. Your driveway, what are you going to do with your driveway? How far from the road do you want to be? Think about it and do it right the first time. Don't wait till the last second. If you want to be 1,000 feet off the road, make sure you do build your house 1,000 feet off the road. If you want to only go short distance, then you're making a mistake because, you're not fulfilling your obligation. As far as in your head financially, do it now and do it right, because if you're not where you want to be, it's not gonna work. Spend the money, spend it right, make yourself happy, and live your dream. I'm a proponent of doing this, and I think it's been great for me, but it's also been a struggle. And I probably would have been a little further ahead if I would have bought pre-existing, but for my horse facility, I'm glad I did what I did because I've made it my way, and I'm always redefining what I'm doing. And the longer I do this, and the years I've done this, the smarter I'm getting. So, that said, leave me some comments. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, whether you agree or disagree. I'm just kind of telling you things off the cuff that you need to kind of pay attention to when you buy raw land. Raw land's a good deal, and it can be a good deal, but it's only if you want something new. But you still need to be able to take that raw land and build it. If you had to pay everybody to do every little thing on this raw land, it may not be cost effective for you, and you may not fulfill your dreams. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Stay tuned for episode 10. We're going to be talking about how to buy pre-existing land or pre-existing farm. and kind of go over that kind of concept next. Hopefully, though, as far as buying raw land, we covered a lot of the points, so you got a good basic foundation for it, and you can understand kind of where I'm coming from. You know, I have no regrets for doing it on my property, but it has cost me a lot of money at a great expense, and but it's nothing that I have a major regret to. The only thing I did regret is not doing enough homework. I probably would have been better off, and it may have not built here. I would have probably bought land somewhere else. But the concept's the same, and I think that's the most important thing. Do your planning. Set yourself up for success. Do it right the first time. Don't fail like I did, because I know I did fail. I should have done things differently. And, you know, I guess I was lucky in some regards and unlucky in others. So, and you'll find out more about that as I kind of continue. As far as raw land goes, as far as location, I'm in a good area. I just didn't think that this land, where I'm at with these neighbors that cut across my property, is a good spot with the shooting and all that. Made a mistake with that, and the land clearing aspect of things, and really failed at that. So those are probably the two biggest things. But again, it comes down to your economic status, and you know, you're stuck when you start off and you're younger. And I was in my 30s, you know, and I didn't start a career till later in life. But you know, you have to take in all these considerations when you start off, and you know, you either go for it or you don't. And I went for it. I bought what I could buy at the time, and I have what I have. I'm okay with that, you know. And you know, a lot of people say, well, you needed more land. I would buy as much of the land as I could. But the downfall is this: in 30 years I've been here, and besides farming 150 acres plus on other people's property, you know, as far as reclaiming my property and doing it and achieving the things that I have done, you know, I've kind of got halfway done with this property. I still got another half better to go. And I still plan on pursuing that dream finally, but I'm never going to be satisfied until I complete my mission. And I am going to complete this mission before I'm dead, and I'm going to get it done, and hopefully you guys can follow me and you see how it all comes through. But right now, I think that hopefully this is helpful to a lot of you guys looking for land and you get started. And I really appreciate you guys tuning in again. If all the things I've talked about are kind of new, I really suggest everybody follows the series from beginning to the end, because every series builds on another and episode, so you guys can kind of understand the whole thing. If you're just bopping around, you're missing the boat. Go back to the beginning, watch this beginning all the way through, and I think you're going to gain more out of this series. And this series is probably going to have over, I don't know, 50 videos probably by the time I'm done, because there's just so much that I think about in my head that I want to tell you all, and it's going to be a while. So, you know, we're going to be busy making videos. So with that said, though, I appreciate you guys tuning in. And until next time, stay safe and good luck in your house or land looking, if that's what your goal is. But do your homework. Do me a favor. You'll truly, you'll be very much better off. Talk to you guys soon.